Hello, this is Christopher Kenworthy with Mastering Color Grading in After Effects, and in this lesson we're going to look less at the technicalities, because you know those already, and more at the artistry required to do a good job with this. Everything you've learnt so far has taught you how to get the most out of footage, but sometimes there can be surprises along the way. Let's look at this clip here of the two girls standing on the hillside. Going back to the very first techniques that I showed you, going into the RGB tab with the RGB waveform, if we were to look at this and correct it the normal way, what would we do? Well, looking at the waveform, I'm seeing that the red's right up there, so I'm going to pull the master red gain down, and then I might see that the green is all pushed up at the top here, so I might want to spread the green gamma down a little and then push its gain up. And then if I look at the blue, the same problem is there, so I'd probably pull the gain down first and push the blue gamma up. And if you look at the clip, it's not looking very good at all. So I'd probably think, okay, I'm going wrong here, I'll reset, try another approach. I'll go into highlights, midtones and shadows. So let's deal with the green first of all. So I'll go into the midtones and really stretch that green out so that it can match the red, and then maybe drag its gamma down a little. I'll do the same with the blue, push its gain right up and bring the gamma down to stretch it out. That's looking a little saturated, so why don't we go back to the master and we could try pushing the gamma up, which usually desaturates a little, but really if you look at our source, we're just ending up with a slightly brighter version of what we had originally. So none of this is working, and the reason for that is when you look at it, this was a clip that was shot in very orangey sunlight, and it's really made the skin tones look very orangey and sunset colored. And it's crazy to try and push this to look as though it was shot under white lighting conditions. And when we're doing our normal trick with RGB, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say the blacks are black, the whites are white, and the midtones are grey. That's not the case with this shot. So if I was to actually correct this shot, I'd have to accept that the reds are going to be darker and brighter and more colourful than the blues and the greens, and I'm not going to try and equalise them. What I might do with this is push the gamma up and go into the highlights, maybe pull the highlight gamma down, or even push it up. There's so much you can do in this clip, so long as you're not falling into the trap of just trying to correct it so that it's black, grey and white in the normal way. So make sure you look at your clip and know what you're trying to achieve. It may well be that you want to completely desaturate it. It may be that you want to make the sky bluer, and so you go into the HSL curves and lift the saturation of the sky, leaving everything else the same. And that's a fine approach, no problem with that. So make sure you know what you're trying to achieve with the clip rather than just working with it out of habit. The same could be said for the dark scene clip. We can go in and correct that in the usual way as we've been shown, or by using the component video for instance. So I can make this look much lighter as we've shown before. I can push the saturation up and it looks like it was shot in the late evening, but it's not a silhouette anymore. But you have to remember, why was it shot that way? It could well be that what you really want is for it to look like a silhouette. And in fact, when this was originally shot, that was the idea. So know what you're trying to achieve before you do any work. Something a little more subtle is this blue water effect. I've called it blue water to make the point that the water looks very blue. The light isn't white, it's blue. So if I were to go the usual route of matching the colors as best as I can, lowering the blue gain, lifting the red gain, then pushing the master gain up and pulling the pedestal down, I've created a perfect dull image of some water. It's technically correct, but absolutely boring to look at. So it's far better to let that blue tint that came in the early morning to stay in that footage. I'm not going to change that footage at all. I'm not going to correct it. Knowing when to correct and when not to grade is half the battle. A similar thing could be said with this dusk scene. It looks like early evening, and we could go into color finesse and do our trick of trying to make it look as though it's shot in the afternoon by matching everything up. And we could do a pretty good job fairly quickly. Already that looks like it's shot in the sunset. But what's the effect we actually want? You have to ask yourself all the time, what is the story that you're really telling? If your story is that it's dusk, let it be dusk. Let that white shirt be blue. So you've got all the technical skills you need. You just need to know when to apply color grading and how far to push it. You've learned all the ins and outs of grading already. All you need to do now is refine your judgment, knowing when to grade and how to grade in a way that captures the story or the emotion or the atmosphere of the piece most effectively. The best way to do that is to get your own footage and start practicing.